Picture this. You find yourself standing in the shadows of an imperial tent on the frozen Danube frontier, as the dying light of the 17th of March, 180 AD, casts long shadows across the Roman camp. The air carries the scent of burning wood and impending death. Inside this canvas pavilion, the last good emperor breathes his final words, while his 19-year-old son waits to inherit the world. Through the tent flaps, you glimpse Marcus Aurelius lying on his simple campaign bed, his weathered face bearing the lines of a man who spent his life carrying burdens too heavy for mortal shoulders. Beside him stands Lucius Aelius Aurelius Commodus, golden-haired and beautiful, in the way that Roman artists love to sculpt, but you can already see something wrong in his eyes. While his father whispers about duty and service, the boy fidgets with a jeweled dagger, his attention drifting to the sounds of soldiers gambling outside, rather than focusing on the philosophical wisdom being offered to him. Remember, the dying emperor rasps, his voice barely carrying across the small space. An emperor exists to serve others, never himself. Power is a burden, not a pleasure. You watch Commodus nod dutifully, but his expression shows the same polite boredom he might display during a tedious Senate meeting. The words that should shape his character bounce off him like rain off marble, leaving no trace of their intended meaning. The generals gathered around the deathbed Pompeianus, Pertinax, men who have bled for the empire in Germanic mud and desert sand exchange glances that speak volumes. They see what you see, a boy who has never shown interest in anything except gladiatorial combat and theatrical performance, now inheriting absolute authority over 60 million souls. When Marcus Aurelius finally stops breathing, when his hand falls limply from his son's grip, the transformation happens instantly. The tent that moments before held a father's gentle guidance now pulses with something entirely different, the electric awareness that unlimited power has just passed to someone completely unprepared to wield it responsibly. "What are your orders regarding the Germanic tribes, Caesar?" Pompeianus asks, his weathered face showing the strain of 3 years spent fighting barbarians in conditions that would break lesser men. You hear the young emperor's response casual, dismissive, delivered with the thoughtless authority of someone who has never watched friends die for every mile of conquered territory. "Make peace. Pay them whatever they want. I'm done with this frozen wasteland." The silence that follows is profound. These veterans understand instantly that years of sacrifice and blood have just been rendered meaningless by imperial whim. But they also understand that their new Caesar holds the power of life and death over them. That objection could easily become treason in the mind of an untested ruler. You watch Commodus throughout the following hours as he receives the homage of his father's advisors, as messengers arrive with dispatches from across the empire, as the business of ruling the world continues despite the fundamental change in leadership. But the boy seems less interested in governance than in the psychological effects of command, the way grown men defer to his every word, the electric thrill of watching experienced warriors treat him as their superior. Later, in the privacy of the imperial quarters, you observe the new emperor with his body slave, a Greek boy named Sauterus, whose intelligence shows in his dark eyes despite his carefully maintained subservience. The interaction reveals something disturbing about Commodus's character, the way he savors the absolute power he holds over another human being, testing the boundaries of that power like a child pulling wings off insects. "What do you think of me?" Commodus asks the slave. And you recognize the question as a trap designed to extract either dangerous honesty or satisfying terror. Sauterus navigates the moment with skill born of necessity, providing an answer that is technically respectful, while avoiding either insult or obvious flattery. But you see what the young emperor sees, not love or genuine loyalty, but the pure fear of prey acknowledging a predator. And you watch with growing unease as that fear seems to excite rather than trouble the most powerful man on earth. That night, as Germanic war drums echo across the frozen river, you follow Commodus as he walks among his father's belongings, scrolls of philosophy, simple military equipment, personal letters that reveal Marcus Aurelius as a man who found wisdom in the careful examination of daily life. But the new emperor shows no interest in these remnants of his father's character. Instead, he focuses on the symbols of power, the purple cloak, the golden crown, the ceremonial weapons that mark imperial authority. When he finally retires for the evening, you remain in the shadows and watch him stare at his reflection in a polished bronze mirror. The face looking back bears his father's noble features, but something essential has been lost in the inheritance. Where Marcus Aurelius's eyes held compassion and deep thought, his sons show only hunger and endless gnawing need for stimulation that will grow stronger with each feeding. The funeral pyre burns through the night, orange flames consuming the body of the philosopher emperor, while his son stands watching with an expression that should show grief, but instead reveals only impatience to begin his reign. You understand, watching this scene, that you are witnessing not just the death of a good man, but the birth of something monstrous. As dawn breaks over the Danube, as the ashes of Marcus Aurelius scatter on the wind and the Roman army prepares for the journey back to the capital, you see the future stretching ahead with terrible clarity. The boy who inherited the throne carries within him every seed of the destroyer he will become, but those seeds have not yet sprouted into the full flower of imperial madness. For now, Commodus is still young enough to believe that power will fill the emptiness inside him, still naive enough to think that fear and love are the same emotion. But you have seen enough of human nature to recognize that this innocence will not last, that the boy walking away from his father's pyre will become something that would horrify the man whose ashes now blow across the battlefield. The empire he has inherited stretches from Britain to Mesopotamia, a vast machine of conquest and administration built by generations of careful rulers who understood that authority without wisdom is simply organized destruction. But the new Caesar shows no interest in maintaining what his predecessors built, only in exploring the intoxicating possibilities of absolute power over human life. You follow the imperial procession as it begins the long journey back to Rome, back to the marble corridors where flatterers gather like vultures, and truth becomes the most dangerous luxury of all. Behind them, the Germanic tribes they were fighting celebrate the sudden Roman withdrawal, understanding instinctively that something fundamental has shifted in the balance of power. The boy who inherited the world walks toward his destiny, still capable of becoming the man his father hoped he might be, but already showing signs of the monster he will choose to become. In the distance, Rome waits, eternal city, heart of empire, stage for the greatest tragedy in imperial history. 3 years later, you find yourself pressed against the marble walls of the Colosseum's imperial corridor, watching as the most powerful man on earth transforms into something that would have horrified his philosophical father. The young emperor, who once showed mere indifference to governance, now displays active contempt for anything that doesn't involve blood and sand. Commodus emerges from his private quarters wearing a mixture of imperial purple and gladiatorial leather, his own design, an outfit that satisfies neither Roman tradition nor arena practicality, but perfectly captures his fractured identity. Through the narrow window that overlooks the arena, you can see 50,000 Romans settling into their seats, their conversations creating a low rumble that rises like heat from the Colosseum's depths. They come expecting spectacle, but few understand that their emperor plans to provide entertainment that will cross every line between ruler and performer, between authority and degradation. Caesar, his advisor Cleander, approaches with the careful steps of a man navigating a minefield. The Senate has sent another delegation requesting your presence at tomorrow's session. Provincial taxation requires imperial attention, and several governors await your instructions regarding. Later, Commodus interrupts without looking up from the gladiatorial equipment being fitted to his arms. Today I have more important business. You watch Cleander's face carefully compose itself into an expression of professional neutrality. But his eyes betray the frustration of a competent administrator watching the empire crumble under imperial neglect. The young Caesar, who abandoned his father's Germanic campaigns, has now abandoned governance entirely, leaving the vast machinery of Roman rule to operate without meaningful oversight. Eclectus, the chamberlain, appears with a scroll bearing the day's arrangements. The exotic animals have arrived from Africa: Caesar, lions, leopards, several elephants. The gladiator schools have provided their finest fighters. The condemned criminals have been properly prepared for. No, Commodus says suddenly, his voice carrying a new edge that makes both advisors freeze. I want something different today. Something more personal. The silence that follows carries the weight of unspoken understanding. Everyone in the imperial circle has learned to recognize the tone that precedes Commodus's most dangerous decisions, the particular quality of voice that emerges when boredom transforms into something darker and more hungry. You follow as the emperor moves toward the arena's preparation chambers, passing through corridors lined with cages holding exotic beasts and cells containing men who will die for the crowd's entertainment. But instead of reviewing the scheduled spectacles like a normal ruler overseeing public games, Commodus stops before a rack of gladiatorial weapons with the focused intensity of a man selecting tools for personal use. I will fight, he announces, lifting a sword and testing its weight, not as emperor graciously honoring the games with his presence, but as a participant earning glory through combat. The words fall into the stone corridor like dropped lead, their implications spreading through the assembled advisors like poison through water. Emperors attend gladiatorial games as supreme judges of life and death, elevated above the brutality by their divine status. They do not climb down into the sand to roll in blood with slaves and criminals. Caesar, Cleander begins, his voice carefully controlled. The people expect their emperor to maintain a certain dignity. Perhaps watching from the imperial box would provide dignity? The word comes out as a snarl that silences everyone within earshot. My father's dignity nearly lost us the Germanic provinces. My father's dignity meant endless Senate meetings about grain shipments, while barbarians pressed our borders. I will show Rome what real imperial power looks like. You see the fear creep into their faces as they remember exactly what kind of man they serve. This is not the philosophical ruler who weighs decisions carefully, but the arbitrary tyrant who can order executions based on momentary displeasure. Their emperor has become something unpredictable and dangerous, a wild animal wearing the purple. The preparation continues despite their unspoken horror. Armor is fitted, weapons are selected, arrangements are made for the unprecedented spectacle of an emperor fighting for his life in front of his subjects. You watch servants and trainers work with the mechanical efficiency of people who have learned that survival depends on perfect compliance with imperial madness. In the holding chambers, you glimpse the gladiators, who will share the arena with their emperor, professional fighters, whose scarred bodies tell stories of countless battles, condemned criminals facing death with whatever courage they can muster, exotic animals that pace their cages with the restless energy of predators awaiting prey. One gladiator in particular catches your attention, a massive Germanic warrior whose presence radiates the kind of competent violence that comes from years of survival combat. His scarred face shows neither the submission of slavery nor the desperate hope of men seeking imperial favor, just the calculating assessment of a professional evaluating new conditions. When Commodus passes his cage, you watch their eyes meet for just a moment. The emperor sees what he always sees in other men: fear, deference, recognition of his superior status. But you catch something in the gladiator's expression that Commodus misses entirely: the look of a predator recognizing another predator, measuring strengths and weaknesses for future reference. Your name? Commodus asks, apparently intrigued by the Germanic fighter's size and obvious competence. Narcissus, comes the reply in heavily accented Latin. I was a chieftain among my people before your father's legions brought me here. The casual reference to his father's military campaigns should anger Commodus, but instead it seems to excite him. Here is someone who acknowledges his imperial heritage, while also displaying the kind of warrior credentials he craves for himself. Perhaps we will fight together sometime, the emperor says, already moving on to inspect other aspects of the day's arrangements. You remain behind for a moment, studying Narcissus through the iron bars of his cell. The Germanic warrior watches Commodus walk away with an expression that contains no admiration, no gratitude for imperial attention, just the patient calculation of a man who understands that every interaction in this environment is a form of combat, that survival depends on reading opponents correctly. Later, as afternoon light floods the arena and the crowd's anticipation builds to a fever pitch, you position yourself where you can observe both the sandy floor, where death will unfold, and the imperial box, where advisors maintain their masks of supportive enthusiasm. The contrast is perfect and terrible below. Honest violence between men who understand the stakes. Above, elaborate pretense designed to hide the horror of what Roman civilization has become. When Commodus finally descends to arena level, when he emerges into the blazing sunlight carrying real weapons and wearing functional armor, the crowd's reaction reveals something deeply disturbing about the relationship between ruler and ruled. They cheer not with the respectful admiration due to divine authority, but with the bloodthirsty excitement of spectators anticipating fresh entertainment. You realize, watching this moment unfold, that Commodus has succeeded in transforming himself from emperor to performer, from ruler to gladiator, from the heir of Marcus Aurelius to something that would be unrecognizable to every previous generation of Roman leadership. But success in this transformation is not triumph. It is the complete destruction of everything that made Roman authority meaningful. The sun sets over the 7 hills as the emperor prepares for combat, casting long shadows across the sand where tomorrow's blood will soak into the earth. In the imperial box, advisors maintain their performed enthusiasm while privately calculating how much longer the empire can survive this kind of leadership. You understand, watching these preparations, that you are witnessing the systematic destruction of a political system that took centuries to build. The boy who inherited his father's throne has become something that the Roman state was never designed to accommodate: an absolute ruler who mistakes performance for leadership, spectacle for governance, and the roar of the crowd for the respect of history. You feel the lion's breath on your face, hot and reeking of carrion, as 50,000 Romans hold their collective breath. This is your masterpiece, the moment you prove that an emperor can be both god and gladiator, ruler and entertainer, philosopher king, and blood-soaked champion. But the beast stalking you in the arena sand is not the magnificent predator you imagined. The lion is old, half-starved, its claws filed down to prevent real damage. Your trainers have drugged it with just enough poison to slow its reflexes without killing it outright. Even your sword has been specially weighted to ensure clean cuts through weakened bone and muscle. This is not combat, it is theater, and the most pathetic kind at that. Still, when you drive your blade into the creature's heart and feel its massive body collapse against your legs, the crowd's roar nearly deafens you. They scream your name with religious fervor, throwing flowers and gold coins into the arena. Some weep with joy at witnessing their god, emperor's triumph. Others simply stare, in fascinated horror, at what Roman civilization has become. In the imperial box, your sister Lucilla watches with undisguised disgust. She remembers when you were children together, when you cried over dead birds and brought injured animals to the palace healers. That boy seems like a different person now, perhaps even a different species. The brother she once loved has been replaced by something that wears his face but lacks his soul. Magnificent performance, Caesar, Cleander says as you return from the arena, lion's blood still dripping from your sword. His smile is perfect, practiced, completely empty. The people adore you more with each victory. You nod, but already the satisfaction is fading. The brief moment of genuine emotion you felt when the blade pierced fur and flesh is gone, replaced by the familiar hollowness that follows every triumph. Killing a drugged lion feels no different from executing a bound prisoner too easy, too safe, too obviously staged. Tomorrow, I fight a bear, you announce. A real one this time. No drugs, no filed claws. Eclectus appears at your shoulder, his face carefully neutral. Caesar, perhaps we might consider varying the entertainment? The gladiator schools have produced some exceptional fighters who could provide more sporting contests. You see through his suggestion immediately. He wants you to return to watching others risk their lives rather than risking your own. But observation no longer satisfies you. You need the immediacy of mortal danger, the clarity that comes only when death stalks you personally. I am not a spectator, you tell him, your voice carrying the edge that makes grown men flinch. I am the star of this show. That evening, in the privacy of your chambers, you stare at your reflection in a polished bronze mirror. The face looking back bears your father's features, but none of his wisdom. Where Marcus Aurelius's eyes held compassion and deep thought, yours show only hunger and endless, gnawing need for stimulation that grows stronger with each feeding. Sauterus helps you remove your armor, his skilled hands working the leather straps with practiced efficiency. He has been with you since childhood, the only person who knows both the boy you were and the man you have become. Sometimes you catch him watching you with something that might be pity, though he is too intelligent to let such dangerous emotions show clearly. Did you see how they cheered? You ask him as he sets aside your blood-stained breastplate. Yes, Caesar. The whole city heard their approval. But what did you think of the fight itself? Was it impressive? The question hangs between you like a blade. Sauterus knows that honesty could cost him his life, but he also knows that lies will only feed the monster growing inside you. His dark eyes meet yours in the mirror's reflection, and for a moment you see something that stops your breath, not fear, but sadness, deep, genuine sorrow for what you have become. I think, he says carefully, that you defeated the lion completely. The diplomatic non-answer should satisfy you, but instead it ignites something dark and hungry in your chest. You spin to face him directly, close enough to smell the fear sweat that dampens his tunic despite his calm expression. That's not what I asked. Sauterus holds your gaze for 3 heartbeats before responding. I think you are searching for something that cannot be found in the arena, Caesar. The words hit you like a physical blow because they carry the ring of truth. But truth is the one thing you cannot tolerate, especially from a slave who exists solely for your pleasure. Your hand moves toward the dagger at your belt, and Sauterus doesn't flinch. He simply stands there, accepting whatever fate you choose to inflict, his calm dignity, making you feel smaller than any insult ever could. You don't draw the blade. Instead, you turn away, suddenly exhausted by the effort of maintaining your anger. Leave me, you whisper, and Sauterus withdraws with the silent grace that makes him invaluable. Alone in your chambers, surrounded by golden statues of yourself in various heroic poses, you finally admit what you have been trying to avoid. The arena isn't filling the emptiness inside you. If anything, it's making the void larger, deeper, more demanding. Each kill requires a bigger audience. Each victory needs greater spectacle. Each moment of genuine feeling slips away faster than blood soaking into sand. From your window, you can see the Colosseum in the moonlight, its massive bulk casting shadows across the sleeping city. Tomorrow you will descend into its depths again, seeking something you cannot name, in the only place that still makes you feel alive. But tonight, in the silence of your golden prison, you face the growing suspicion that what you're searching for might not exist at all. You stand in the underground chambers of the Colosseum, breathing the thick air that carries scents of sweat, fear, and fresh sawdust, spread to absorb blood. Above your head, 50,000 voices chant your name with the desperate enthusiasm of people who have learned that their survival depends on your entertainment. Today marks your 100th victory in the arena, a milestone you plan to celebrate by executing 100 condemned criminals dressed as mythological figures, your personal recreation of divine judgment. Caesar Hercules, announces the herald's voice echoing through the tunnels. Slayer of beasts, champion of Rome, beloved of the gods. The titles sound magnificent when spoken by trained voices, but you know the bitter truth behind the pageantry. Every opponent you have faced was either drugged, crippled, or armed with weapons designed to break at first contact. Your victories are elaborate lies, performances choreographed to guarantee your survival and the crowd's amazement. But lies told often enough begin to feel like truth, and you have started believing your own mythology. When you emerge into the arena's blazing sunlight, when you feel the sand beneath your feet and hear the crowd's worship washing over you, for a few precious moments you forget that you are not actually divine. The first criminal awaits you, dressed as Orpheus, with a broken lyre in his hands. He is perhaps 30 years old, convicted of sedition for speaking against the games. His crime was words. His punishment will be steel through his heart, while crowds applaud the spectacle of justice. Sing for your emperor, you command, raising your sword to catch the light. The man's lips move, but no sound emerges. Terror has stolen his voice, leaving him mute before the god he supposedly insulted. You see yourself reflected in his wide eyes not as a divine judge, but as a predator playing with wounded prey. The recognition should disturb you, but instead, it sends a familiar thrill racing through your veins. Your blade opens his throat in one smooth motion, arterial blood painting the sand in bright crimson arcs. The crowd's roar drowns out his death rattle, their cheers transforming murder into entertainment, atrocity into art. You raise your bloodied sword toward the imperial box where your advisors sit frozen in performed approval. But something is different today. As you move through the rows of condemned criminals, methodically ending lives while the crowd counts your kills, you begin to notice details that penetrate even your bloodlust-induced haze. The way some spectators turn away rather than watch, the uncomfortable shifting in the senatorial sections, the growing patches of silence that interrupt the rhythmic chanting of your name. By the 50th execution, your arms ache from the repetitive motion of killing. By the 70th, even the crowd's enthusiasm begins to wane. Too much death too quickly overwhelms even Roman sensibilities. By the 90th, you realize that what you thought would be your greatest triumph has become a grinding exercise in mechanical slaughter. The final criminal is a boy, perhaps 16, convicted of theft. He wears the costume of Ganymede, cupbearer to the gods, his young face streaked with tears that have carved clean lines through the arena dust, coating his skin. When he looks up at you, you see not fear but something worse, pity. This condemned child, facing death in the most brutal manner imaginable, feels sorry for you. "Please," he whispers, his voice barely audible above the crowd's restless murmur. "Make it quick." Your sword completes its arc almost without conscious thought, opening the boy's throat in a spray of crimson that paints your face and chest. But as his body falls to the sand, as the crowd's roar returns with renewed intensity, you feel nothing, not satisfaction, not relief, not even the hollow triumph that usually follows these performances. You feel empty in a way that frightens you more than any Germanic warrior ever could. The crowd begins chanting a new title they have created for you, Hercules Romanus, the Roman Hercules. They see you as divine, a god walking among mortals, but you know the truth that they cannot see. Gods create life. They do not spend their afternoons mechanically ending it. Gods inspire love and worship through their perfection. They do not command it through the threat of death. That night, in the imperial palace, you summon your closest advisors for a private meeting. The agenda is simple but revolutionary. Tomorrow, on New Year's Day, you will appear before the Senate dressed as a gladiator to claim the consulship. Not as emperor graciously accepting a ceremonial role, but as a fighter demanding recognition for his prowess in the arena. The Senate will see me as I truly am, you explain to the assembled group, your eyes bright with manic enthusiasm. Not hidden behind purple robes and imperial pretense, but as a warrior who has earned his position through strength and courage. The silence that greets this announcement is profound. Eclectus, Cleander, even the usually obsequious palace slaves understand that you have finally crossed the line between eccentricity and madness. An emperor might fight in the arena for sport, but to appear before the Senate, the most ancient and dignified institution in Rome, dressed as a common gladiator, represents the complete destruction of everything the empire claims to represent. Caesar. Eclectus begins carefully. The senators might find such innovation difficult to accept. Perhaps a more traditional ceremony would better serve. The senators, you interrupt, will accept whatever I give them. They exist to serve me, not to dictate the terms of their own service. But even as you speak these words, with imperial authority, you can see the change in your advisors' expressions. The fear that has kept them obedient for years is being replaced by something more dangerous. The cold calculation of people who have finally accepted that their emperor has become a threat to the empire itself. Marcia steps forward, her beauty still stunning despite the strain of recent months. My love, she says, her voice honey-sweet, but carrying an undertone you have learned to recognize as danger. Surely the people need time to prepare for such a magnificent ceremony. Perhaps we could postpone. No postponement, you declare. Tomorrow, the world will see the birth of a new kind of emperor, one who rules not through inherited privilege, but through proven strength. You do not notice the glance that passes between Marcia and Eclectus, a moment of silent communication that seals your fate. You are too intoxicated by your own vision of tomorrow's triumph to recognize that your closest companions have already written the ending to your story. As the meeting ends, and your advisors file out with expressions of forced enthusiasm, you remain alone in the council chamber, surrounded by maps of an empire you have never truly governed, and statues of ancestors whose legacy you have systematically destroyed. Tomorrow, you believe, will vindicate everything: the arena performances, the abandoned wars, the executed rivals, the humiliated Senate. Tomorrow, Rome will finally understand that strength matters more than tradition, that spectacle trumps dignity, that gods make their own rules. You have no idea that tomorrow will never come, that tonight, as you sleep in your silk-sheeted bed dreaming of gladiatorial glory, the people you trust most in the world are preparing to end your life with the same methodical precision you have brought to your arena performances. The monster who has ruled through fear is about to discover that fear cuts both ways, and that even gods can bleed when their worshippers finally stop believing in their divinity. You wake on the last morning of your life feeling strangely peaceful, as if the weight that has pressed down on your chest for years has finally lifted. The December air carries the promise of celebration tonight. Rome will welcome a new year, while you claim the consulship in a ceremony that will redefine imperial power forever. But in the servants' quarters of your own palace, 3 people who know you better than anyone are preparing to murder you before sunset. Marcia stands before her dressing table, applying cosmetics with the careful precision of an actor preparing for the performance of her life. Her hands, which have caressed your face in moments of false intimacy, now steady themselves for the task of delivering poison. The woman who has shared your bed for 3 years understands that survival requires the complete destruction of the man she once pretended to love. He suspects nothing, she tells Eclectus as he enters her chambers carrying a small vial of clear liquid. He spoke for an hour last night about how the senators will weep with joy when they see him claim the consulship as a true warrior. Eclectus nods grimly. Your chamberlain, who has served emperors for 20 years, understands that some threats to the empire transcend personal loyalty. The poison will weaken him, but not kill him quickly. Narcissus will need to finish what we begin. In the gladiator quarters beneath the Colosseum, Narcissus wraps his massive hands in preparation for wrestling practice with you. But today's session will be different from all the others. Today, the Germanic warrior who has spent months studying your fighting style, learning your weaknesses and habits, will use that knowledge to snap your neck like a dried branch. You dress for the consulship ceremony with elaborate care, selecting robes that blend imperial purple with gladiatorial leather. The outfit is your own design, an attempt to marry Roman tradition with arena innovation that satisfies neither sensibility. Your servants help you with the complex fastenings, their faces showing the strained politeness of people humoring a madman's delusions. Caesar looks magnificent. One of them ventures, the flattery automatic and meaningless. I look like what I am? You reply, admiring your reflection in the polished bronze mirror. A warrior emperor, who has earned his position through blood and courage, rather than inherited privilege. But as you speak these words, you catch sight of something in the mirror that makes your confidence falter. Behind your own reflection, barely visible in the bronze's imperfect surface, you see the ghostly image of your father. Marcus Aurelius stands there as he did in life, dignified, philosophical, deeply disappointed. His presence feels more real than your own reflection, more substantial than the gaudy robes you wear or the golden crown upon your head. Father, you whisper, turning to look behind you. The chamber is empty except for your servants, who exchange worried glances at your apparent conversation with empty air. The ghost was just a trick of light and polished metal, but the shame it awakened feels devastatingly real. For the first time in years, you see yourself as Marcus Aurelius would have seen you not as a divine performer, but as a lost child playing dress-up with symbols he doesn't understand. The moment of clarity passes quickly. Buried beneath years of practiced self-deception, you are Caesar, beloved of the people, champion of the arena, God among mortals. Your father's disapproval means nothing compared to the roar of 50,000 voices chanting your name. Marcia arrives as you finish dressing, carrying your morning wine in a jeweled cup that catches the light like captured fire. Her smile is radiant, her voice warm with artificial affection. My love, you look every inch the warrior emperor. Rome has never seen anything like what you will show them today. You take the wine without suspicion. Why would you doubt the loyalty of people who have never been given reason to love you? In your mind, fear and devotion are indistinguishable. Terror and worship merely different expressions of the same fundamental recognition of your superiority. The poison works slowly, mixing with your blood as gently as honey dissolves in warm water. At first, you feel nothing except the familiar warmth of wine spreading through your chest. But gradually, a strange heaviness settles into your limbs, a lethargy that you attribute to pre-ceremony nerves. Perhaps, you say to Marcia, your voice slightly slurred, I should rest briefly before facing the Senate. I feel tired. Her eyes shine with something that might be tears or might be relief. Of course, my love, a bath would refresh you perfectly. The warm water will restore your strength for this afternoon's triumph. The suggestion seems wise, sensible, exactly what you need to prepare for your greatest performance. You do not recognize it as the final line in a script written by people who understand your habits better than you understand yourself. As you walk toward the bath chamber, your steps grow more unsteady with each passing moment. The poison is not meant to kill you, merely to weaken you enough that what comes next will appear to be an accident. A tragic mishap during an imperial bath. The kind of domestic disaster that claims even emperors when the gods will it so. The bath chamber fills with steam as slaves pour heated water into the marble pool. Golden dolphins and silver nymphs emerge from the mist, like figures from a dream. their metallic perfection mocking your growing frailty. You lower yourself into the warm water with movements that feel disconnected from your will, as if you are watching someone else's body respond to commands you did not give. "Shall I send for Narcissus?" Eclectus asks with perfectly performed concern. Your wrestling instructor could help work the stiffness from your muscles before the ceremony. The suggestion penetrates your poisoned thoughts like a lifeline thrown to a drowning man. Yes, Narcissus, the one person in your circle who has never lied to you, who treats you as a fellow warrior rather than a divine curiosity. His strong hands and honest conversation will restore your strength and clarity. "Send for him," you whisper, your voice barely carrying across the steam-filled chamber. Eclectus withdraws with a slight bow, his footsteps echoing off marble walls, as he goes to summon your executioner. You settle deeper into the warm water, feeling the heat penetrate your muscles, while the poison continues its methodical work on your nervous system. The combination should alarm you, but your capacity for suspicion has been dulled along with everything else. When Narcissus enters the bath chamber, his massive frame cutting through the steam like a ship through fog, you feel a moment of genuine relief. Here, finally, is someone real. A man whose scars tell honest stories, whose strength was earned through genuine combat rather than staged performances. "Caesar," he says, his accented Latin carrying the same respectful directness you have always appreciated. "You wish to see me?" "I feel weak," you admit, the confession slipping out before you can stop it. "Something is wrong with my body. Everything feels distant." Narcissus approaches the edge of the bath, his expression showing what appears to be genuine concern. "Perhaps I can help. Sometimes the body needs firm encouragement to regain its strength." You nod gratefully, too weakened by poison to recognize the double meaning in his words. When his hands touch your shoulders, you expect the therapeutic massage that has helped you recover from arena injuries in the past. Instead, you feel his powerful fingers sliding up to encircle your throat. Why? You manage to gasp before his grip tightens. Narcissus's scarred face shows no emotion, not hatred, not satisfaction, not even regret, just the professional detachment of a man completing a necessary task. Because someone has to end this. The water closes over your head as your struggles weaken, and everything you thought you understood about power and loyalty and divine authority dissolves like salt in the sea. You feel your life leaving through your throat as Narcissus's hands squeeze with methodical precision, each finger positioned to cut off blood flow to your brain, while maintaining enough pressure to crush your windpipe. The warm bathwater that should comfort you instead becomes your grave, red with your own blood as you thrash weakly against an opponent who will not be bribed, threatened, or reasoned with. This is not how gods are supposed to die. Your vision darkens at the edges, but your mind remains cruelly clear, forcing you to experience every moment of your pathetic end. The man who claimed divine status, who demanded worship from millions, who believed himself the greatest warrior in the empire, dies like a common criminal in a bathtub, while his own servants watch from the doorway. But the most devastating revelation comes not from physical pain, but from perfect understanding. As consciousness fades, you finally see yourself as others have seen you for years, not as a god emperor or warrior king, but as a diseased animal that had to be put down for everyone's safety. The crowd that cheered your arena victories will celebrate your death with even greater enthusiasm. The senators you planned to humiliate will weep with relief when they hear the news. Even the slaves and servants who feared your daily wrath will sleep more peacefully knowing that your reign of terror has ended. You are not dying as a martyr or tragic hero, you are dying as a problem that has finally been solved. Narcissus maintains his grip until your struggles cease completely, until the emperor, who claimed to be Hercules, lies still and small beneath the water's surface. There is no malice in his face as he watches your life end, only the grim satisfaction of a craftsman completing difficult but necessary work. When he finally releases your throat and lifts your head above water, your eyes stare sightlessly at the painted ceiling that depicts your imagined victories over mythical beasts. The irony is perfect, and terrible you die, looking at lies about yourself, surrounded by artistic representations of glories you never earned. Marcia enters the bath chamber as Narcissus arranges your body to suggest accidental drowning. Her face shows no grief, no regret, no second thoughts about the murder she has orchestrated. Instead, she displays the calm relief of a physician who has successfully amputated a gangrenous limb before the infection could spread. "It is finished," she says simply, her voice carrying no emotion except exhaustion. Eclectus appears beside her, already calculating the political necessities that will follow your death. The Senate must be informed immediately, and the Praetorian Guard will need new loyalties to secure before word spreads through the city. They speak about your corpse as if you were furniture to be moved, rather than a human being who had ruled the known world only moments before. The transition from emperor to carrion happens so quickly that it reveals the fundamental emptiness of the power you thought was absolute. Within hours, your body is being dragged through Rome's streets by citizens who spent 12 years pretending to worship you. The purple robes that marked your divine status are torn from your lifeless form and used to clean the mud from soldiers' boots. Children throw stones at your corpse while their parents cheer, celebrating the end of a nightmare that lasted longer than many of their own lives. But the crowd's celebration masks a deeper truth that none of them want to acknowledge. Your death solves nothing fundamental about the system that created you. The imperial machinery that transformed a philosopher's son into a monster continues unchanged, ready to corrupt the next man who inherits absolute power. The Senate moves quickly to erase every trace of your existence. Your name is chiseled from monuments with the same enthusiasm that once carved it into marble. Your statues are melted down to make coins bearing other faces. Your arena victories are struck from the records as if they never happened. The damnatio memoriae, the condemnation of memory, seeks to pretend that Lucius Aelius Aurelius Commodus never existed. But historical erasure cannot undo the damage you inflicted on the empire your father died protecting. The treasury you bankrupted with gladiatorial spectacles remains empty. The provinces you ignored while playing warrior continue their slide toward rebellion. The respect for imperial authority that took centuries to build crumbles in the wake of your excesses, never to be fully restored. In the arena where you sought divine glory, new gladiators prepare for combat, while trying not to think about the emperor who died like a common criminal in his own bathtub. Some of them are men you sentenced to the sand for crimes both real and imagined. Others are volunteers who chose the gladiator's life over starvation in Rome's increasingly desperate streets. Narcissus returns to the underground chambers where fighters prepare for death. But his status has changed. No longer just a training partner for an imperial madman, he is now the man who ended Rome's nightmare. Other gladiators treat him with a mixture of respect and unease, understanding that he possesses something rare and dangerous: the willingness to kill gods when gods prove unworthy of worship. Did he suffer? Asks an old fighter, a veteran of hundreds of arena battles who has seen every possible way that men can die. Narcissus considers the question with the same methodical precision he brought to your murder. Less than his victims? He answers finally, "The boy I killed today suffered far less than the boy he executed yesterday." The Germanic warrior speaks of you as if you were already fading into legend, another cautionary tale told in the darkness between matches. But he understands something that the celebrating crowds do not. Killing you was not victory but necessity, not triumph but surgery, removing a cancer before it destroys the entire body. Your former palace fills with new occupants, as the Praetorian Guard auctions the empire to whoever can pay their price. The marble halls that echoed with your laughter now ring with the negotiations of men who understand that Roman authority has become a commodity to be bought and sold, rather than a sacred trust to be preserved. Sauterus, your Greek slave who knew you before the madness consumed you completely, survives the transition by carefully forgetting everything he witnessed during your reign. The boy who once helped you dress for arena performances now serves new masters who prefer their entertainment less bloody and their emperors less divine. Sometimes, in quiet moments between duties, he allows himself to remember the 8-year-old prince who cried over dead birds and brought injured animals to the palace healers. That child existed, however briefly, before the empire's poison transformed innocence into cruelty. But the man that child became deserved the death he received, and Satyrus feels no guilt about his relief that the nightmare has ended. The roses you planted in the imperial gardens continue to bloom, their blood-red petals and vicious thorns serving as an unintended monument to your character. Future emperors will walk past them without knowing their origin, admiring their beauty while remaining ignorant of the hands that planted them. Like everything else about your reign, they will be remembered only as long as they serve someone else's purposes. Your father's writings survive your memory's condemnation, his meditations continuing to inspire readers who find wisdom in his thoughts about duty, service, and the proper use of power. But these same readers, studying Marcus Aurelius's philosophy of virtuous leadership, rarely learn about the son who rejected everything his father tried to teach him. The empire limps forward, wounded but not dead, carrying the scars of your misrule while slowly healing under more competent leadership. The arena spectacles continue, but without imperial participation. The gladiatorial games remain popular, but they are no longer confused with actual governance. Rome learns to separate entertainment from authority, performance from leadership, spectacle from power. In the end, your death teaches a lesson that your life never could, that absolute power without moral foundation always destroys itself, that empires survive not through the strength of their rulers, but despite their weaknesses, and that even the most elaborate delusions eventually collide with reality. The water in which you died is drained and replaced, the marble scrubbed clean of every trace of your blood. New emperors will bathe in that same pool, but none will carry your particular combination of inherited privilege and moral emptiness. The empire you nearly destroyed with your appetites continues its slow decline toward inevitable collapse, but your death buys it a few more centuries of existence. The Germanic warrior who killed you melts back into the anonymous mass of arena fighters, his moment of historical significance forgotten by everyone except the historians who will puzzle over the details of your demise centuries later. He lives for several more years, fighting and training and eventually dying in combat like the warrior he was born to be. Your story ends not with the glory you craved, but with the justice you never understood you deserved. The boy who inherited the throne of the world dies alone in dirty water, strangled by calloused hands, mourned by no one, and forgotten by design. It is the most fitting conclusion imaginable for a life spent confusing worship with love, power with respect, and performance with reality. The empire continues without you, proving that even the most megalomaniacal emperor is ultimately replaceable. New men claim the purple, new advisors whisper in imperial ears, new crises demand attention and resolution, but none of your successors will repeat your particular mistakes, partly because your death serves as a perfect cautionary tale about what happens when unlimited power meets unlimited appetite. In the end, you get exactly what you always wanted, to be remembered forever as a performer. But the performance that ensures your immortality is not your arena victories or artistic achievements. It is your pathetic death, told and retold as a warning about what human beings become when they mistake fear for love and power for purpose.